It's 2020. Victoria Police, Cold Case Unit. They receive an envelope with no return address postmarked locally. Inside, a single sheet of paper. It's handwritten and brief. The note contains just a few sentences, but those sentences point to the possible location of a body that's been missing for 44 years. Willi Koeppen's body, the note claims, is buried beneath a dam. Not just any dam. A specific property, a specific location. The property of Simon Vink. Simon Vink, the husband of June Vink, the woman Willi Koeppen threatened to sack on the night he disappeared. The woman Willi sexually harassed with unwanted advances. The husband, who owned a dark American-style car matching the description of the mysterious vehicle seen parked outside the Cuckoo restaurant at around 4 a.m. on February the 29th, 1976. Simon Vink, who died years ago, who was never questioned, who never had to answer for what he may or may not have done that night. But he was far from the only suspect who fit the trinity of means, motive, and opportunity. Welcome back to Struth. This is part 2 of the disappearance at the Cuckoo, our investigation into the vanishing of Australia's first celebrity chef, Willi Koeppen. In part 1, we laid out all the evidence. The abandoned van with keys in the ignition, the mysterious car parked the wrong way outside the restaurant, the 3 a.m. phone call to Dr. Butler's surgery, the kitchen doors left open, Dr. Butler's inexplicable decision to bring antipsychotic drugs to a drinking session, and the catastrophic failure of the police investigation. If you haven't listened to the first of our 2-part series, please go back and do so now. All of it points to one conclusion. Willi Koeppen was murdered. So now in part 2, we're going to examine every suspect, every theory, every possible explanation. Because somewhere in this small community of Olinda and the Dandenong Ranges, someone knows what happened. Someone killed Willi, or helped kill him, or covered it up. And we're going to look at each of them. Karen Koeppen's behaviour in the days after the disappearance of her husband Willi raises questions. She didn't report Willi missing for 3 days, 3 full days, while his cottage stood empty, while his children wondered where their father was. Her explanation was that she thought Willi had gone to Queensland to his Poole Island property. He'd been talking about taking a trip, and Dr. Butler had confirmed this plan. But does that really make sense? If he'd gone to Queensland, how did he get there? He didn't have his van, he didn't call a taxi, he didn't catch a bus. His clothes were at home, his money was in his bank account untouched. Karen ran the restaurant. She would have been at the Cuckoo multiple times over those 3 days. She would have known about Willi's van, the door open, the keys in the ignition. She would have known about the kitchen doors being unlocked. And she didn't think that Willi disappearing at exactly the same time that all of this occurred was strange. She didn't think that it warranted a phone call to the police. Or did she know exactly what happened and was giving whoever was responsible time to cover their tracks? Years after the events of that night, Willi's daughter Sabina confronted her mother directly. She asked Karen what she really thought had happened to Willi. Karen's response has haunted the family ever since. I really think it was an accident. An accident. Not, I don't know what happened, not, I think someone killed him, but I think it was an accident. What could that mean? How would Karen know it was an accident, unless she had information about what had happened, unless someone had told her, unless she'd been there? An accident implies that something went wrong unintentionally, that whatever happened to Willi wasn't planned and wasn't deliberate, that someone made a mistake, that events spiralled out of control, and that death occurred, but wasn't the intended outcome. So what kind of accident? A confrontation that escalated? A physical altercation where someone hit Willi harder than they meant to? An interaction with medication that went wrong? And if it was an accident, why wasn't it reported? If Willi died accidentally, why not call an ambulance or call the police to explain what happened? I suppose the reason that you wouldn't do these things is if the accident occurred under circumstances that might have been a bit tricky to explain. If the people involved couldn't afford to have their presence revealed. If there were other factors, affairs, conspiracies, cover-ups, that made calling the authorities problematic. There's another detail about Karen that's worth examining, something that multiple people have alluded to over the years. Her social circle, which is sometimes referred to as Karen's camp. These sources describe a tight group of friends surrounding Karen in the months before Willi's disappearance. The group included Dr. Butler, who we've heard about, his wife Anne Robinson, Karen's lover, Tony Benici, a Melbourne barrister. They socialised together, supported Karen through her marital troubles, and according to family members, openly disliked Willi. He was in the way. He was an embarrassment. He was an obstacle to Karen's happiness. Disliking someone isn't a crime, and supporting a friend through a difficult marriage is, for the most part, admirable. But it does create a very interesting dynamic. When you have a group of people who all benefit from Willi's absence, Karen could run the restaurant without him, she could pursue her relationship without hiding, she could escape the constant fights and the alcoholism and the volatility. Butler and Robinson wouldn't have to watch their friend Karen suffer. They wouldn't have to respond to crisis calls about Willi's suicide threats. They wouldn't have to mediate fights. And Karen's lover, of course, Tony Benici, could have Karen without the complication of a husband who refused to agree to divorce. Everyone in Karen's camp had motive for wanting Willi gone. Not necessarily dead, but gone, away, out of the picture. Did that wish become something more concrete? Did someone in that group decide to make it happen? Did they plan it together? Or did one person act on behalf of the group? Karen ran the Cuckoo restaurant successfully for decades after Willi's disappearance. She never remarried, she raised the children, she maintained the business that Willi had built. And she died in 2022 at age 88, taking whatever she knew to the grave. Before her death, she maintained her innocence. She told her children she had nothing to do with Willi's disappearance. And when confronted, she continued to say that she simply thought it was an accident. But she never explained how she knew that. She never revealed who might have told her. She never filled in those gaps. And now she's gone, and the chance to learn what she knew is gone with her. Following on from that theory is the jealous lover theory. Remember, both Willi and Karen were having affairs. Karen, as we mentioned, was involved with Tony Benici, the Melbourne barrister, part of Karen's camp. But Willi also had a lover, a woman he'd been seeing, and that relationship ended badly 6 months before his disappearance, when he allegedly found her in bed with someone else. After Willi's disappearance, police received a tip. A man in South Australia, reportedly the same man Willi had discovered with his lover, had admitted to murdering Willi in a jealous rage. This story creates a love triangle: Willi, his lover, and another man who was also involved with her. The timeline fits. Willi finds them together 6 months before he disappears. He's devastated. The relationship ends. It explains, perhaps, the spiralling of his mental and physical health. The other man's still around, still involved with this woman, and maybe there's some animosity, jealousy, unfinished business just bubbling away under the surface. Then on the night of February 28th/29th, this man learns that Willi is alone, intoxicated, vulnerable. There's a confrontation, things escalate. The body needs to be hidden. The mysterious car at 4 a.m, the dark American sedan parked the wrong way. Maybe it belonged to him. Police questioned this person of interest in 2014, nearly 40 years later, but no charges were ever laid. We don't know why. The details have never been made public. Another surprising theory comes from a colourful source. In 1991, none other than Mark Chopper Reed, one of Australia's most notorious criminals, published his book, Chopper, From the Inside. And indeed, the book itself was written while Chopper was on the inside. In it, he claimed that convicted killer Alex Tsamarkas had confessed in Pentridge Prison that the bloke owed him money and there was a falling out. Alex Tsamarkas, the man identified by Chopper Reed, was also known as the Barbecue King. Not because he sold barbecues, but because of the way he got rid of bodies. He was convicted of at least 2 murders and suspected in 8 more. He was beaten to death in Pentridge in 1988. But police found no evidence linking Tsamarkas to Koeppen. No proof Willi was ever in debt. The Cuckoo was highly profitable. And Chopper Reed, of course, was notoriously unreliable. His books were riddled with exaggerations and furphies. The 2018 coroner found that there was no evidence to support this theory. Chopper, of course, once famously stated that the truth should never get in the way of a good yarn. And what a yarn this was. Perhaps it was multiple people that made this disappearance such an effective one. This is a theory that some investigators find most credible. Willi was murdered by someone he knew, someone in his inner circle, someone close to home, someone who had help. Because almost everything about this case points to someone who knew Willi's routines, knew the layout of the restaurant, knew where he'd be and when. The mysterious 3 a.m. phone call suggests someone who knew Willi was at Dr. Butler's surgery. How would a stranger know that? The staging of the van, parked in an unusual location with its door open and keys in the ignition, suggests someone may be trying to make it look like Willi had returned to the restaurant, when actually he hadn't. The unlocked kitchen doors suggest perhaps that Willi was interrupted when he was locking up, or someone else opened them to make it look like Willi had been there. The absence of a struggle, the lack of witnesses, the complete disappearance, all of this suggests planning, organisation, knowledge of the area. And statistically, of course, in cases where someone disappears under suspicious circumstances, the perpetrator is more often than not someone known to the victim. A family member, a friend, a business associate, a lover. Random abductions by strangers are rare. Professional hits by organised crime usually leaves bodies as warnings. But murders by intimates, murders that arise from personal grudges or domestic situations or financial pressures, these are the murders where bodies disappear and cases go cold. So if we accept, or at least consider, the inner circle theory for a minute, who becomes the main suspect? Butler's the obvious one. He was the last to see Willi alive. He had opportunity and means, even according to his own statements. He had access to those sedating drugs and a possible motive if he was as loyal as everyone seems to think he was to Camp Karen. But he's never been charged and no direct evidence links him. Karen too had motive. She wanted out. She wanted control of the restaurant, and that accident comment suggests some layer of knowledge. Her delay in reporting him could be explained by their estrangement, though. And what about Karen's lover, Tony Benici? Willi was the obstacle, but again, no evidence was ever found that he was involved. Or was it all of them? A conspiracy? Butler sedating Willi, someone else coordinating the 3 a.m. call that got Willi to a certain location, the disposal of the body, the staging of the van. It would explain everything, the medication, the phone call, the van, Karen's delay, Butler's silence. But proving conspiracy 50 years later is nearly impossible, unless someone confesses. And several of these people are now dead. At the top of this episode, we spoke about Simon Vink. Let's think about this from his perspective for a moment. It's late on a Saturday night. Your wife comes home upset. She tells you what happened at the restaurant. Her boss, drunk, abusive, volatile, threatened to fire her. Worse, he made unwanted sexual advances, propositioned her, harassed her in a way that even in the 1970s would make any husband furious. And it wasn't the first time. And you know where that boss is, because word travels fast in a small community like Olinda. You know Willi Koeppen's still drinking at the restaurant, or nearby. You know he's drunk, vulnerable, alone. Maybe you just want to scare him. Maybe you want to have it out with him, to tell him to stay away from your wife. Maybe you drive up to the Cuckoo in your dark American sedan to confront him. Police identify only 2 cars in the local area fitting the description of that mysterious sedan, and Simon Vink owned one of them. That's not speculation, that's a documented fact. Simon Vink had a car matching that description. As we've mentioned, he had motive. His wife had been threatened and harassed. And he had opportunity. He lived locally, he knew the area, could have easily driven around to the Cuckoo in the early hours. And then, of course, there's that note. 44 years after Willi disappeared, police received that anonymous note. The note that claimed Willi Koeppen's body was buried beneath a dam. Not just any dam, a dam owned by Simon Vink. But the questions remain, who sent the note? Why wait 44 years? What did they know? The note has never been verified, and the dam, as far as we know, has never been searched. But that tip exists, sitting in a police file, pointing directly at Simon Vink. However, he passed away years ago, as did his wife June, taking whatever they knew to their graves. Again, crucially, there's no physical evidence linking him to Willi's disappearance. His car was never forensically examined. Not in 1976, not ever. And even if it was his car, even if he was there, maybe he was too late. Maybe someone else had already addressed his Willi Koeppen problem. Which brings us to perhaps the most fundamental question, the one that might answer some of the others. Where is Willi's body? In 50 years of investigation, not a single trace of him has been found. No remains, no clothing, no personal effects, nothing. The most obvious answer is that he's somewhere out in the Dandenong Ranges. The steep, densely forested hills have swallowed the body and won't give it back. The terrain's treacherous, dense undergrowth, deep gullies, mountain ash forest. In the years since 1976, there have been plenty of bushfires that have burned through parts of the Dandenongs, potentially consuming or scattering any remains. If someone killed Willi near the restaurant and dragged his body into the forest, there are countless places where it could have been hidden. A steep ravine where the body tumbled down and was covered by falling leaves and branches. A deep gully filled with ferns where searchers would never think to look. A location off any of the many trails where even experienced bushwalkers wouldn't venture. And of course in 1976 forensic techniques were more primitive. Search methods were less sophisticated. There weren't drones, ground penetrating radar, cadaver dogs. It would have been relatively easy to hide a body in that terrain. There is another possibility, of course. Willi isn't in the Dandenongs at all. Let's go back to that American sedan at 4 a.m. As several Quentin Tarantino movies will tell you, those cars were notorious for having rather large boots. It could have easily transported Willi's body anywhere, to the city, into Bass Strait, to a construction site, to a rural property. If the murder was planned, the body could be far from the Dandenongs. Or maybe we're looking at that car all wrong. Maybe the call at 3 a.m. was for Willi to go and meet someone he knew, with a large American sedan that could take him to anywhere he wanted to go. After nearly 50 years of investigation, countless hours of police work, and a 2018 coronial inquest and modern forensic review, there are still some fundamental questions that we can't answer. Who made the 3 a.m. phone call? We still don't know. Dr. Butler's never said, if he does know, and the person who called's never come forward. Why did Butler bring Maloril, the antipsychotic drug? About the only thing I think we can say about that is that inviting someone to keep drinking and giving them an antipsychotic drug at the same time is not the act of a friend. What did Karen mean by, "I think it was an accident"? How did she know? Who told her? What kind of accident? Who was driving that mysterious car seen at 4 a.m? Was it Simon Vink coming to confront Willi over his treatment of June? Was it connected to the disappearance at all, or just an unfortunate coincidence that's been a red herring in this investigation for 5 decades? Was the anonymous 2020 tip about Simon Vink's dam credible? Is Willi buried there? Why has it never been searched? Is there any significance to the escorts who visited the restaurant before and after Willi's disappearance? Or was it just a sad detail, one that characterised Willi's spiralling personal life? Why is Willi's van parked in that unusual location? Was he the one that parked it there? Did someone else move it? What does the location tell us about what really happened? And the biggest question of all, who did it? Who's responsible for the death of Australia's first celebrity chef? And who's still around keeping secrets? In March 2021, the Cuckoo restaurant closed after 63 years. Family sold it in 2022. Karen died that same year at 88, taking whatever she knew with her. Time's running out. On February 29th, 1976, Willi Koeppen disappeared. His van was found with keys in the ignition, doors open. He never took his money, his passport, never said goodbye to his children. 2018 coroner ruled his death as a suspected homicide, and Victoria Police maintains an open investigation. Somewhere, either in the Dandenongs or far away, or destroyed, Willi's remains wait to be found. Somewhere, someone knows the truth. Truth. What a tale. Thanks for listening to this 2-part investigation into the disappearance of Willi Koeppen. I'd love to know what you think about this case. Who did it? Why? You can find us on all of the socials. Just look up Struth Podcast or send me an email, struthpodcast@gmail.com. While you're at it, make sure you give us a like. Tell a friend about the show, anyone who likes a good mystery, a good yarn. And if you've got a special request for an Australian mystery that you'd like me to cover, you can reach out with those as well. Until then, thanks for the support and thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Cheers.